Greetings, everyone. Dr. Brian Scott with you today. This is Insight to the End Times. Welcome to another week here in the month of April, 2025. Imagine we're now into our fourth year of these podcasts. We trust they've been helping you and bringing some insight and understanding to where we might be on God's end time timetable. You know, everything's changing in the world on a daily basis, hourly, even on an hourly basis. And when I look back when we started these podcasts a couple years ago, even though things were pretty intense, they were nowhere close to the intensity of today. So here we are a couple years later, and things are really accelerating and really occurring on a very quick basis. These are all prophetic events. The Bible speaks about them, and we have been examining them here in Insight to the End Times as to their prophetic significance. We've been looking at scriptures and what they mean to us today. We've been looking at world events. And currently we are studying in the book of 2 Timothy, chapter 3. This is where Paul writes to young Timothy, the pastor of the church in Ephesus. And he advises him that in the last days, which really refers to the last of the last of the last days. So that reference, last days, in and of itself, is very close to the very end. And then he goes on to say, perilous times are going to come. Perilous times means exceedingly dangerous times. The only other reference in Scripture to perilous, or the word that describes perilous, is in the Gospels where Jesus comes to the land of the Gadarenes, and he comes upon the madman of Gadara, who is a demon-possessed man. And when he commands the demons to come out of this man, they say, we are a legion. A legion represents at least 6,000 soldiers in a legion. So when they said they were a legion of demons, the inference is this man was possessed by 6,000 demons. He was so exceedingly dangerous that they would put chains and shackles on him and he'd break everything off. He was wild, he was exceedingly dangerous, and everybody in the region was absolutely terrified of him. Well, that's what Paul says to Timothy. Those are the kind of days we are going to see as we approach the very end of the time period we're living in right now. We're in these verses because after that first verse, Paul goes on to share all these different aspects of perilous times. And as we closed out last week, we were finishing up some of the aspects in verse number 3. Let me read a couple of them to you. As verse 3 begins, we talk about unloving people, and then unforgiving people, and then people who are slander-oriented, slanderers. And then we got into the one that deals with people without self-control. If I recall correctly,
Hey, this is Matt from Insights to the End Times. I wanted to interrupt just for a quick moment and ask you to do us a huge favor. If you could go ahead and hit the like, share, or subscribe button, it would allow us to make sure that you stay up to date with all the latest videos from Dr. Scott. Now back to the episode.
We did 2 podcasts just on that one alone, without self-control. Why? It's widespread. It's almost in every area of life today. So let's continue today. The 13th illustration or example of perilous times here in verse number 3 is brutal. People are brutal. Now over in the King James Version, it refers to the people as fierce. So those 2 words go together, brutal and fierce. When we look at the Greek word that is used in King James to describe the word fierce, here's the definition. Cruel, fierce, harsh, savage, violent, vicious, brutal, and uncivilized. Now just think about the last 3 terms here. Savage, violent, vicious, brutal, and uncivilized. Wow, that's pretty heavy duty. In ancient Rome, they had sporting events. They were barbaric sporting events. The gladiators would fight against one another until death was on the scene. No holds barred in these vicious attacks. So they would have blood flying everywhere, bones broken, flesh flying off. It was all out terror. And that's the word that describes brutal and fierce. We would expect a more civilized setting in our world today, but folks, that's not necessarily the case. We're seeing a lot of brutality around the world. We saw a massive demonstration of it in 2023, October of 2023, when the Hamas terrorists from Gaza invaded the southern part of Israel, and they literally, brutally massacred around 1,200 people. And then that war began, Israel going after all the terrorists because they'd taken something like 250 people hostage. And that's still going on today. It's well into its second year. Horrible situation, obviously. But we don't even have to see that in hand-to-hand combat anymore. Just turn your television on. Just turn on your television, and the type of programming that's on television, or if you go to the theater, the movie theater, the type of movies that they're putting out are absolutely horrendously vicious, barbaric. So we've become numb to this phrase, brutal and fierce, being the 13th sign of perilous times. We've become numbed. It doesn't even concern us or bother us anymore because we see it, we hear it, we are aware of it all the time. The more vicious and nauseating the news, the more conditioned and removed we are from the impact of the offense and what's going on there. So I want to share some thoughts with you and some facts and figures with you here today. These keep changing all the time. They keep intensifying. We've got all kinds of things occurring which are absolutely horrendous. Brutal, fierce. Let me give you some thoughts here. A teenager today, by the time they turn 18 years of age, they've watched over 200,000 violent acts on television, and they have probably witnessed as many as 40,000 murders on television. Now, these are simulated, of course. These are in the movies or in the TV shows. But they have seen 40,000 people supposedly murdered on television. And so we have the good guys and the bad guys, right? And when the good guys fire and shoot and kill a bad guy, there's no fear of loss of life. It's a case of, hey, great. Hey, that's wonderful. We got rid of that guy. We become anesthetized. We become numb. We become, could I say it this way, brain dead to this brutality that is being presented to us, this fierceness that's being presented to us. No wonder today's younger generation are so brutal and harsh to one another. Now, they use the internet today a great deal to attack one another. And with all these newest things coming on the scene, such as artificial intelligence and the ability to cut and paste and so on, that's a very simplistic terminology for what they're able to do today. You can spread all kinds of brutality or fierceness or filth or degradation or attacking a person's reputation and their integrity with a click of a button. So we're in a very, very harsh time of life. Amen. Now, what's the Bible say? In Isaiah 60, it says there's darkness coming on the land and gross darkness coming on the people. So in a lot of these things, movies and so on that are coming on, horror shows and horror movies and so on, it seems to me that each new presentation is trying to outdo the previous presentations. Let's get back to our statistics for a minute. Kids. Now, when we say kids, we're not talking teenagers. We're talking even younger kids, younger children. they're watching at least 4 hours of computer type games, or they're playing more than 4 hours of computer type games on a daily basis, of which 50% of those games contain harsh violence. So you take a 5-year-old to a 7-year-old or a 9-year-old and you expose them to this, and it becomes a way of life, a way of thought, a way of thinking. On the other side of the coin, they lose their respect, their honor, their decorum as it pertains to adults. What about teachers? Teachers are like, my goodness, they almost have to wear armor in the classroom. Things are so out of hand. The majority of children, they want fantasy violence type games. So when they go to the store, they're looking for something that has violence attached to it. Folks, I'm kind of out of that picture. Our kids are growing. We have grandkids. My grandkids talk about things, and they're not allowed to watch a lot of this stuff, and they're not allowed to participate in a lot of this stuff. But even though they are shielded from it, they still come out with things that just shock me, because it's so different than the way we were raised and exposed to things. Really, really changed dramatically. Now, let me go on. I don't know if you've listened to a lot of today's popular music. For one thing, I guess my ears aren't tuned into this wave of music today called music. To me, it's noise. I can't make out the words. I don't know what these rap artists are saying whatsoever. To me, I can't fathom it. It's beyond my comprehension. Because there's a lot of violence in these, a lot of the new music, and the innuendos. Oh my gracious. There's no decorum anymore, it seems. It's really hard. It is really, really hard to listen to a lot of the new music today if you really do listen to it. Now, I'm old school. I like to listen to high sounding, clean sounding songs sung by people who really do know how to sing. See how much I'm dating myself? But even if they're singing in a foreign language, I really do enjoy listening to one of the world's greatest tenors of the day. He's Italian. He sings a lot of his songs in Italian. I don't know any Italian at all, but it's so clean, it's so pure. The sound, the voice, the intonation, it's wow. And then you turn to what's going on in the current scene. I can't even understand most of it. So listen to this. The average teenager today listens to over 10,500 hours of music from their grade 7 to the grade 12 years. Great deal of which, if not most of it, is all violence. That's 10,500 hours. Do you realize how much time that is that they're listening to this? And when you listen to this kind of thing all the time, violence becomes a way of life, and it enters into your daily life. And so you treat people in that fashion, and it becomes harsher and harsher. Let's talk about Sodom and Gomorrah for a minute. If you know the story there, it comes out of the book of Genesis. Abraham and his nephew Lot were instructed by God to leave the lands they lived in the north and to head towards greener pastures in the south. And so they did. And when they got to the destination, they had so many herds of animals and so many flocks, et cetera, that they had to divide up. So Lot went to one side and Abraham went to the other side. And we're not even told really where Abraham settled. At least it doesn't come to mind. But Lot's choice was Sodom and Gomorrah. Sodom and Gomorrah was a city. I'm going to call them twin cities. They were designated as Sodom and Gomorrah, but it came to be known as sexual perversion, filth, and all kinds of horrible things. So when we get into this story of Lot, he has two angels that come from God, or sent by God, two male angels. They show up, they talk to Lot, they tell him that God is about to destroy all of Sodom and Gomorrah because of the filth and the violence and the perversion. And Lot takes the two angels and goes back to his home. And it's not long until there's at the door, and the sexually perverted men of the city have come to Lot's house, and they're demanding that Lot send these two angels out to them so they can have sex with the two angels. That's perversion. That's prohibited by the Bible. It was prohibited then, and it's still prohibited now. And Lot says, no, you can't. I'm not going to do that. But then he makes this unbelievable statement. And he says to them, I got two virgin daughters, beautiful girls. I'll send them out, and you can do with them whatever you want. Now, how dumb thou art. I can't even imagine that. A father saying you can have sex with my two virgin daughters? Well, the next scene we see in this story is that God starts to rain down fire and hail and brimstone from heaven, and it wipes out all of Sodom and Gomorrah and everybody in Sodom and Gomorrah, except for Lot, his two virgin daughters, and his wife. And as they're leaving, God says to them, don't look back. And they've left behind his two married daughters and son-in-law, so they left four of their family behind who refused to go with them, laughed at them. And Lot's wife turns to look back to see, I'm sure to look back to see if there's any chance her two daughters and son-in-laws are getting out, and she turns into a pillar of salt and doesn't make it. That was heavy-duty brutality. Fierceness had come on that land to the point where God says, I'm wiping it out completely. Now, that's where we are today. We're at a place where God's about to release the 7 years of tribulation on the world. And that 7 years of tribulation is really a return to the Sodom and Gomorrah days of destruction. And when we have studied this in the past in the book of Revelation, we've looked at all of the wrath of God being poured out on the waters and the seas and the vegetation and the earthquakes and the fire and the brimstone. And that's where we are. We're getting closer and closer to that. So one more area here. The brutality and fierceness is the topic of abortion. And that's violence that occurs in the womb. Now, in the nation of Russia, for instance, from 1957 to 1991, when the USSR collapsed, that's a period of 34 years, the estimate is that over 306 million babies were aborted. 306 million. That's almost the population of the United States. In the nation of China from 1971 to 2020, that's a 49-year period, they guesstimate that just shy of 490 million babies were aborted. That's the entire population of the United States, Canada, and Mexico put together. In the United States itself, in 1973, the decision in the Roe versus Wade case, up till the present time, so 73 to 2020, they considered 62 million babies have been aborted. So worldwide, we've seen almost 2 billion abortions occur. That's violence, that's fierceness, that is brutality. We are talking about end times, perilous times, and the world seems to be fascinated with brutality and fierceness, and they turn a numb and a blind eye and a deaf ear and a numbness towards all this brutality occurring as if it's normal, and that's the way it is, and it's not supposed to be. But it's a sign of the end, and it shows us how close we are to these perilous times being upon us, called the 7 years of tribulation. Well, I hope I've helped you today, and we'll be back in a couple of days with another podcast for you as we continue in 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse number 3. Thanks for joining us today. Amen.
Hey, thanks for watching this episode of Insights to the End Times. I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to get notified every time we release a new video, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right over here. Now, if you'd like to catch the previous episode, you can do that right here, or the entire playlist is right above right here. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next episode of Insights to the End Times.